Hello, I am Max from Test Drive Blogs, and today let's have a tour of my new daily driver, 1994 Lexus LS400. I was originally going to wait until I'd fix all the little things that I wanted to fix on the car, but I decided it would be worth it to do it now because this shows kind of the starting point of the car before I start fixing everything. And then I'll make another tour later showing everything that I'd fixed. This video will be kind of a combination between all of the styles of videos I've done before, kind of like the Quirks video I did of the Nissan 300ZX, plus a tour video like my Ranger, plus a review video like I normally do. So, let's get started. And of course on the Quirks side, I'll try and cover stuff that Doug DeMuro didn't cover in his video of the LS400, or something that is different between the 1990 and the 1994 LS400s, which there's a few things, not all too much. And to start on the Quirks before we even get in the car, as you can see here is the key, and it has one single button on it. And the one button does serve as an unlock and lock, as you can tell. And of course some other interesting things happen whenever you unlock and lock the car. So, to start off, of course, as you can tell, instead of honking the horn, it just beeps, and no lights flash whenever you lock or unlock the car, so you just have to rely on either the beep or hearing the doors lock and unlock. But say your remote's dead or something and you can't actually use the button to set the alarm like you normally would with the key. Well, if you lock the door by the driver's keyhole here, it locks all the doors and sets the alarm, as you can see by a little light in there. And of course, if you use a key like this to unlock the door, or you hit the button, it'll undo the alarm. And upon heading into the car, you notice that there's all kinds of buttons and all kinds of everything on the interior of this car. And to start off with the door here, you have some interesting stuff, such as the seat memory, as you can tell here, and this button, which Doug did cover in his video. Basically, what this does is it moves this, the seatbelt thing that it attaches to on the door. And so, if I can do this, if I hit the button to go up, it automatically goes up, and it can go down. And the funny thing is that it does actually say normal with a little arrow next to it when it's up in about this position. Maybe you see it now, but it actually says normal with a little arrow next to it, and you match the arrow up with the other side, and apparently that's where the normal setting is. And of course, since this car is a luxury car, it does have a fully powered seat where you can move back, forward, up, down, both in the back and the front. I usually keep it all the way down because I don't have much headroom. And you have this one which actually does the back, as well as if you push it up and down, it automatically moves the headrest, so you don't actually have to adjust it yourself. And then the last switch is lumbar over here. Of course, power windows, and it does have an automatic down driver's side window. And then hanging here on the left side of the dash here, you have some interesting buttons. Of course, you have your normal mirror controls, pretty easy to operate, up, down, all that. Parking brake release down below that. And this one, remote on and off. And basically what that does is it either enables or disables the car being unlocked or locked by the remote. And then down below you do have your gas cap and trunk releases. And as Doug said, it's actually a lot simpler on this one to lock it. Basically all you have to do, push it in and it's locked, so nobody can actually open the trunk or the gas cap unless they have the key to undo this. And then of course all you have to do to undo it, you put the key in and turn it, and it pops back out. And actually right up here under the dash you do have your diagnostic port for OBD1, as well as this little dial, which is unlabeled. But basically what it does is it controls how loud the beep is whenever you lock or unlock the doors via the remote. And also under the dash is a nice little vent. You can adjust it the way you want. And the weird thing is that it comes on with the other dash vents. It doesn't come on with the foot vents, which are right there, as you can tell. It comes on with the regular dash vents, so you have air blowing like between your legs or on your legs while you're also getting it blown in your face. And of course, as I mentioned, you have your little security light here that tells you when the alarm's on, and your gauge dimmer, which I'll show in a second. And of course, mine does feature the power adjustments for the steering wheel, as I showed in my previous videos, and it still won't go down, but you can go forward, you can go backwards towards the dash, to your liking, and then the tilt away, which is basically when you turn the car off, it'll go back to its like furthest up and back position. And then here's something on the steering wheel that Doug didn't exactly cover in his video because his car did not have it, but this is the controls for the car phone that would come in the center console. It also has an antenna on the rear window, but it has these three buttons, and this button here, I have no clue what any of them do because they don't do anything anymore, because it doesn't actually have the actual car phone with it. But here are the controls, whatever, if you can make anything out of them. This car features a nice 4-spoke steering wheel with an airbag back behind. And on the right side is your cruise control and wiper controls. And so to show everything else, let's go ahead and take the key, which I already showed you, which has this interesting design. It's kind of like a BMW key, where it's not an actual like cutout key, it's got cut into it. As you can see, the gauges are all nicely laid out. They are backlit all the time. And as Doug mentioned, it does have the cool like 3D feature where like the oil pressure light and the seatbelt light are back behind the gauges and the gauges are on a further forward face kind of thing. Even though of course I forgot to mention that the warning lights are actually kind of projected onto the gauges instead of being actual lights behind the gauges themselves. And so let's go ahead and fire it up. And of course for the gauges you have your temperature gauge on the left, tachometer, speedometer, fuel gauge on the right, and your odometer down the bottom right. And it also has the gear you're in on the center there, which also has down here, which is kind of neat because it makes it easy so you can, if you're looking down here, you can tell what you're shifting into, or if you just want to look at the gauges, say you're on the highway or you're wanting to shift down or something, you see what gear you're getting into here. To the right over here you do have the trip switcher, but it doesn't actually work on my car sadly. I think something's unplugged, as well as the reset and all that. And so as I mentioned earlier, you do have your gauge dim over here, which works in a simple way. Dims and brightens the gauges. But the interesting thing about the gauges on this car is of course they are always backlit no matter if you have the lights on. Like that's the only indication I have the lights on is the little light up here. And the interesting thing about it is that this is the oldest car I've ever seen this on that if you have your headlights on, as you can tell, if I flip the headlights on and off, the gauges don't get dimmer in daylight because it has a sensor somewhere on the dash, I'm assuming, that senses how light it is outside, and that's what causes the actual gauges to dim. Like you can just turn on the headlights normally, and throughout the day, if you're driving through the rain or whatever, and it's still kind of light out, you can still see your gauges perfectly fine, which I think is a cool thing to do because it works a lot better than like my old Chrysler LeBaron that had digital gauges from 1990. It just made everything dim as soon as you turn the lights on. So it's kind of neat. The center side of this car isn't too crazy. You have some vents up top with your hazard switch and the climate control down below that, which sadly on my car, the screens right here and right here do not work unless it's extremely hot out, which I'll try and get a little bit of footage of what they show and whatnot. But basically this one shows the temperature of your climate control, which that's gonna blow in my face and I didn't want that. And this one over here is a clock, as you can tell by the hour, minute, and second lights over there. On the newer cars, this was dual zone, but this is only single zone, as you can tell. Front and rear defrost, low, medium, high, AC button, all of the basic stuff that you need, temperature and all that. Down below that, this car does feature the premium radio system, which is simple to operate. You can tell I've done stupid things with the equalizer, which are kind of funny. You push them and then you twist them and then whatever.
Right now. It's kind of a big deal actually.
Nothing too crazy about it. It's got a tape player, it's got a CD player in the trunk, which I'll show in a little bit. And that's about it. One weird thing about this radio is that usually scan, if you have a scan button in your car, usually it scans through all of the stations you can get with your car. But in this car, if you hit scan, it goes through the presets instead of just going by station. So it's kind of strange. It really confused me at first because I was like, why do I keep hearing the same things over and over like every 12 times? And that's why. You hit scan to stop and so on and so forth. And apparently this does have something to do with the anti-theft system as well. It says there on the tape player, as well as there's a little key over here on the right. I don't really know how it's tied in, but it sure is. Down below that, you have the only two options this car has, or actually there's 2 out of 3 options. You have the traction control off button, which of course turns off the traction control. It shows a little thing on there on the dash. Press it again, turn it back on, and the heated seats on the front. You can also turn off overdrive. There's a light up there for that. And also with the transmission, this is a 4-speed automatic. It feels like a 5-speed sometimes. I'm really confused about it sometimes. But yeah, it also says overdrive with a hyphen, which I think is funny. Very simple to operate. And then you have the power or normal electronic transmission control right here. And with power, it basically, I think, makes it shift earlier instead of later. That's all I've been able to figure out that it does. It doesn't really seem to change it any other way. And then up here in front of the shifter, you have an ashtray, if I can get to open. There we go. This one is actually supposed to go in the back, but it's pretty simple to operate. You push this to undo it, yada, yada, yada. And then, there you go. It's an ashtray. There's not anything crazy about it. And then back behind the shifter, you have a few things. You have cup holders right here, which absolutely suck. They're not useful for hardly anything. They can barely fit any modern drinks in them. And that's the only 2 cup holders in the car too. So there's none in the back. none anywhere else. Those are the only two you get. Center console back behind that with change storage, a little bit of storage on there. And actually here, right where this tape is actually where the wire goes through for the car phone, as you can see down there. So I could actually plug one in. I don't know how much it would work if I actually found one again, but I could actually still plug it in somehow. And then this is where your AC comes through for your rear vents, as you can tell. Going up top, you do have a manually dimming rearview mirror. But as you can tell, there's no little switch for it. Basically what you do is you hit this button and it dims itself. It's powered, but it's not like, or it's not automatic. And I found that strange since I got this car. And of course above that, you have this little thing to protect yourself from sun that goes in between the mirror and the roof, which is a nice little touch. I usually keep it down all the time because I have no reason to put it back up because it's not blocking my side at all. And then you just have some lights up here. As you can tell, you can turn it to door on or off, depending on if you just want the big light on or not. And your sunroof controls here, which actually, if you have it tilted up, like I do now, it completely locks out the sliding function. So you have to put it down all the way, and then you can slide it back. And of course it has a cover, so you don't have to have the sun being down you all the time on it. And mirror, light, nothing too crazy up here. So one more thing I find incredibly interesting about this car, as you can tell, my seatbelt is not retracting like it should, for whatever reason. Like it will not retract hardly at all. For some reason, whenever I turn the key off, or if I hit this button, as you can watch, it retracts itself. But only when I turn the key off or hit that button. I have no clue of why. It doesn't seem, because I know it's not something like, you know, not something to do with actually moving the seatbelt. It's something to do with hitting this button. And I have no clue of what causes it or why it does it. One more thing I find somewhat interesting about this car, I feel like a lot of cars have this, but if I turn on the windshield wipers, as you can tell, one windshield wiper is pretty tiny, and the other one's like twice the size almost. I guess because of the way the windshield's laid out or something, it has to be like that, I don't know. And so we're going to shut it off and check out the outside. Back in the mid-1980s, Toyota had this crazy idea of making an affordable luxury car. Fast forward a few years and you have the very first Lexus to ever hit the market, the LS400. It was first shown off at the Detroit Auto Show in January of 1989 and became available to the public later that year. Of course, along with the smaller front-wheel drive ES250, which was mainly based off of the Camry platform. And in a surprise, the LS400 sold extremely well. This was altogether nicer than the American luxury cars of the same year, as well as more reliable than the European ones. The LS400 just took off, and took the Lexus name with it. The LS400 name went through two different generations, one being from 1990 to 1994, like you see here, and the next one being from 1995 to 2000. While the base price of the LS400 started out at about $35,000 in 1990, it rose to above $50,000 for 1994, which is extremely shocking to me because you can find these all over the place for well less than $10,000 nowadays, even with very low miles. But even with that, it was still cheaper than the similarly spec'd BMWs and Mercedes of the era, so the car still sold well. For the 1993 model year, the LS400 received a bunch of changes, ranging from the wheel size to the brake size to just slightly different moldings and all that, as well as stuff like a digital odometer and dual airbags and stuff like that. A version of the LS400 was sold in Japan under the Toyota Celsior name as well. For styling, the LS400 isn't really that crazy at all, and I think that's really what Toyota was trying to go for, considering it was more simplistic and just simpler seeming than its European competition. To me, the craziest part of the styling of the car is the back, because it looks like it has like Volvo brake lights, with just the styling and the sheer size of the brake lights. Other than that, it's really understated. Really, it's just a functional car. It's not trying to be anything crazy or spectacular or anything like that. It is a car to get you from point A to point B as many times as you need. The 1993 and 1994 LS400s ran on 225/60 R15 tires, with disc brakes at all four corners, and of course there were alloy wheels you could have chromed if you wanted. And for some of the more interesting things on the outside, as you can tell, glass headlights, yellow fog lights. All the Lexuses from this era came like this. I don't know why they had yellow fog lights, but they sure do. And of course I still haven't fixed this marker light that's supposed to work over here. And this is actually how the marker light's supposed to be down here. The big light is a turn signal, the outside light is a marker light. You can fold the mirrors in or out. I guess this is for like if you back into something, you don't destroy the mirror. And here's what the sunroof looks like open like this. Pretty simple. And yes, this is the way the rear window rolls down. Whenever it's all the way down, it looks like this. It rolls down like, it's weird because it has, if I can actually do it myself, hold on, in a momento. But if I put the window up, it has this like little nub that runs in a track of some sort back in behind it. And it like tilts, or like the back goes down to a certain point and it starts tilting downwards, which is weird. Because like you could see, that's how it goes all the way up and then back down. And the front window also has that same little track, as you can see here. I've seen this on like Nissan 300ZXs and stuff, but nothing really other than that. Another fairly interesting part of the outside of the Lexus is that it actually has a really curved rear window. As you can tell when I walk over this way, it's got a lot of curve to it. It's one of the most curved I've seen in a modern car. Like, you're used to, like, you know, back in the 50s, cars had really curved windshields and whatnot, but they found out they were bad because it kind of distorted your vision whenever you looked out the curved part. But here's a modern car with kind of the same design philosophy. And of course, one of the other options, I see you call it on this car, is the fact that it has the gold badge package. A lot of Toyotas had this from this generation. I don't know why, I have no clue, but it sure is an option, and I sure do have it on mine. And so I undid the gas cap with the button inside. As you can tell, it likes to do that. I don't know why, but it likes to just pulverize me with air and also a little bit of gas whenever I open it. And as you can tell, there's no like string or anything to hold it on. So you stick it right here, or whenever I get it right, there we go. And it stays there until you put it back. It's a good place to keep it because I've been known to forget gas caps before. There we go. So on the passenger side, of course, you get your powered seat and all that. Everything's pretty much the same in the door panel. The one really interesting thing about over here is if you see right here is the glove box. Now, in I believe Doug's video, it did not have an airbag over here. It was a 90 LS400, so it didn't have the airbag. Of course, you can lock the glove box. I'll show that off real quick before actually opening it. Simple as that. But it didn't have an airbag, so this all was part of the lid for the glove box. But interestingly enough, they decided, hey, we're not going to worry about actually changing the dash too much whenever we put an airbag. We're just going to put an airbag and leave whatever is left for the glove box, which meant this. This is the glove box. As you can tell, I have my dash cam here, which doesn't really work at the moment. As you can tell, this is the size of the owner's manual. That's as far as it goes in. That is how deep it goes in. Like, I can barely fit my hand in here. There's a little cup holder thing right here, and that's really all you get. It's the tiniest glove box I've seen in a modern car that I know of. Like, it's insanely small. Like, this isn't a very big owner's manual, and it just doesn't fit. And there's a light back there, it looks like, but it doesn't look like it's working. So, yeah, it's not, it's barely big enough for gloves, honestly. And then heading on to the back, it's surprisingly not very exciting back here, hardly at all. You do get an ashtray to play with, if you're that kind of person, window switch. And then sitting in here, this front seat is almost all the way back, I'm pretty sure. And I'm 6'1", and I still have a little bit of space between my knees and the seat. Got a pocket behind the seat, of course. Cigarette lighter, and the airflow that you want back here. Another pocket in the back of this seat. And you also get a center console, which on the newer LS400s had cup holders in the end. This one does not. All it has is a thing. Also, no pass-through to the trunk. So if you get to the trunk from the inside, you're out of luck pretty much. It is nice though, at least, that you get a little light back here for reading if you'd like to do so. And I guess one more thing, you do actually get a subwoofer in the back here with the premium sound system. And it does actually sound pretty good too, surprisingly, for being a 24-year-old system. And so have a look at the trunk. As I said, there is a button on the inside, or you can just come in and put the key in right there. twist it, and pull it open. And it also disables the alarm if you do that. And of course, there are a few things here in the trunk that Doug DeMuro didn't actually notice or didn't say anything about when he did his video of the LS400. First off, obviously over here, you have the CD changer. You open it like that, it pops out the cartridge, you put your CDs in this thing, and then you put it back in, and you can control everything from the front. Simple enough. And then, right above it, you pull on this little latch, and you have your Lexus branded first aid kit. And the craziest thing about this to me is that it has everything with it still. It has little scissors, it has the first aid kit guide, it has basically everything that you would want, and it's 24 years old. So I wouldn't recommend using any of it, but it's definitely cool that it has it, and I like that it's branded. And another nice thing about it is that it has these Velcro strips on the back. So when you want to put it back, actually you also have a fuel door release on the inside here if you get your battery dead or something. You stick it right there, and it's supposed to stick. It doesn't really stick anymore. And then to close it, you just push it on the little thing. And then on the other side of the trunk, you have something that might even be more interesting, which is the factory toolkit. I have everything but whatever goes here. I think it's some sort of wrench or something. But like, it's almost all there. And you have this Lexus branded little light that doesn't work as far as I know. You have a Lexus branded towel of some sort. Of course, you have all the tools you need to take out the spare tire, which is underneath here, and it does have a full-size spare that is actually the same style as the wheels on the car, which is pretty cool. And you have basically everything that you need, although I do have a toolkit in here with me at all times because I'm just that kind of person. And of course, there's a good amount of space in here in general for anything you might need to throw in your trunk. And it does have a carpeted roof. And then of course, sadly, my hood struts are still pretty bad, so I can't really do much other than just show the engine. But here it is. It's a 4.0 liter 1UZ-FE engine. This car is V8 rear wheel drive, of course. You can tell the traction control is over there. It makes about 250 horsepower. It's not incredibly fast, but I talk more about that in the review section later on in this video. But it's definitely a smooth running engine. It's very quiet too. Usually I can't talk over engines when I'm like this. Alright. And so, let's go ahead and take it for a drive. Alrighty, so we are going to be driving the LS400 through some various roads that I know of around here. Put these windows up real quick. Close the sunroof. But try not to let any AC vents. Hey, that's another weird thing with this car. You can't really see it at the moment. If I do this. So, whenever closing the sunroof, which I'll open all the way again. Whenever closing the sunroof, I'm still holding the button. I'm going to hold the button and it stops. I'm still holding the button, as you can tell here. I have no clue of why it does that, but it stops there and you have to hit the button again to get the rest of the way closed. And of course, there's a shade. So hopefully the audio is okay through this. My microphone is still kind of broken, as in it broke off the mount. So hopefully this doesn't sound too bad. But let's go ahead and drive around a little bit if I don't run over anything. The first thing you may notice is just how quiet it is in here. Now this does have a whiny power steering pump. If you hear anything whining, that's what it is. But for the most part, it's almost perfectly quiet in here, which is why I'm not really worried about the microphone situation. It's amazing how quiet a 24-year-old car can be. It's amazingly quiet. Like, if I have the AC up like this, I can't hear anything other than the AC at all. So, it's incredibly quiet. And the main reason I bought this car in the first place, or wanted to look at these, was because I plan to do road trips a lot, which if you don't know, I already did a road trip and may have damaged the car a little bit, as you may have been able to tell from underneath the front bumper. Basically, I hit a dead deer. That's the gist of it. And luckily nothing really happened other than it ripped the front of the bumper down a little bit, or not the front of the, not the bumper itself, but like a piece that's under the bumper. And that's pretty much all that happened, luckily. No coolant hoses ruptured or oil pans or anything like that. So I got really lucky with that. I was in the middle of Ohio of all places, and of course I'm 500 miles from Ohio here. It was a 1,000-mile road trip, 1,100-mile road trip, and in the last 30 miles of going up there, I hit a deer. But it's fine. I'm gonna get that fixed at some point. I'll probably just like zip tie it or something. Not entirely sure, but yeah. So that was what my plan with this car was anyways, was to take all kinds of road trips all over the place. And I've been able to test it very well, of course, because I drove it home from Kansas City, which was about 340 miles because I took a detour down to a place that my parents had in central Missouri before heading home. So it was about 340 miles, and that was directly after I bought it. Like, I bought the car and then drove it 340 miles back home. So I got a good test of it there, but then also I took the 1,000-mile road trip to Ohio. I went to Sandusky, Cedar Point, Kings Island, Cincinnati, all that. And I've had zero problems with this car. The one thing I did do, of course, was changing the timing belt out, or I did two things, I guess. I changed out the timing belt and put new tires on it. But that's not anything too crazy because these cars need timing belts after, 90,000 miles or so at most. This car had 152,000 miles on it, and it had the original timing belt on it. So I'm glad I got that changed before I took the road trip, because that was one thing that, if it went, it would destroy the engine. So got that taken care of, got the tires taken care of. The car rode fine before getting new tires, but it rides absolutely amazing now that I have new tires on it. I have to say it's amazing how much tires can change a car. If your car has old tires, just go ahead and change them. You'll be glad you did. But there we go, through a little kind of curvy road. This car is definitely not made for handling. It's definitely not made to be on like any kind of tracks or going fast around, corners or anything. This is a car for highway driving pretty much. And I can confirm that it does in fact do highway driving very, very, very well. It'll cruise at pretty much any speed you want. I'm not going to say much other than that, but I know the speed, the top speed of these cars, the top speed of this car, I think is electronically limited to 149 miles per hour, which is amazing for a car with 250 horsepower or so. And speaking of horsepower, we'll give it a little punch here. There's a traction control coming on. It's not very fast at all. It's not fast in acceleration, but once you do get up to speed, it holds its speed very, very well. But it does hold its speed very well. If you have the cruise control on, I barely notice it ever downshifting up hills with the cruise control on at, 65, 70 miles per hour, somewhere in there. So it's got enough torque to hold its own. It's just not incredibly quick off the line. It also has very long gears compared to, other cars that would be faster, like Mustangs and stuff. I can guarantee would be faster than this thing in the early 90s. But for 250 horsepower, it's not too bad. It's more than adequate to get it up and going, of course, and that's all that really matters. And as you can tell now, I'm kind of driving on a bit of a highway. It's not really a highway per se, it's more of a, I don't know, it's a road with 4 lanes and 50 miles per hour speed limit. And another amazing thing about this car is how just smooth it is. The power delivery is smooth except for when it has to shift. If you hold down the throttle while it has to shift from like first to second, it'll pause for, a half a second to a second and then shift. It doesn't shift instantly, or even close to instantly, like a lot of newer cars do. Of course, it's got the slush box, 4-speed automatic, but it's not bad. It did shift after a second and it'll go and whatever. It's not like it's dangerous or anything. And I'm guessing that's the way it's supposed to be from the factory. But it's more smooth in the way of the power is smooth, but it's insanely smooth with the suspension. The suspension in this car is amazing. This one does not have the air suspension like some of them did. That's the only option it's actually missing, as far as I know. But it doesn't need it, honestly. All that really does is it helps out with, maybe getting the car over bumps or something, because it can raise itself up or lower itself or whatever. But the factory suspension, the base model suspension, is fantastic still. It's amazing. Like, even my dad, who hates Japanese cars, well, doesn't really hate Japanese cars, but definitely doesn't really care for them that much. He had to admit how actually smooth this car is. And everybody that's rode in it is like, wow, this is amazingly smooth, whatever. But sure, those people may be coming from trucks or, you know, Cobalts or crap like that. But it's really smooth. And like I said, that's what I bought it for. I want it to be a highway cruiser, and that's one of the nicest things is being able to cruise on the highway and just not hardly feel any bumps. Like right now, I'm sure this road isn't incredibly nice, but it isn't like a really tore up road or anything. But like, I'm feeling almost zero bumps at all. As you can tell from the camera, like you can tell I'm not really moving at all. So it's not a performance car. It's not like a super fast enthusiast whatever car, but it is actually really an enthusiast car. Mostly because it's the first Lexus. That's the coolest thing about it, really, is that it was what started the Lexus brand, and they sold tons of these, and they're so cheap now. It's like, why not pick one up? Which is what I thought, and which is why I'm currently driving one. So yeah, and one other thing I wanted was, of course, AC that worked, which is not a very hard thing to get on cars usually. You just have to pick up a car. Like 90% of cars in the past 20 years have had air conditioning of some sort, even like the lowest work vehicles. So, but I can say this car has definitely met my expectations. I wouldn't say it's, you know, went far past my expectations, although the suspension is a lot nicer like than I could have ever imagined. But it's definitely a good purchase, I would say. So anyways, that will conclude this whole entire video of my LS400. I'll probably make another one in the future once I fix some things like the screens and the bumper and all that stuff. So I'll make like a final, not really final tour, but like I kind of want to restore this car in a way, and fix all the stuff that's broken and then drive it pretty much as that. But I figured that would be a while until I got that done. So hope you guys enjoy this, and you can leave your thoughts on the LS400 down below in the comment section. And more car stuff is coming soon, for sure. Considering I now have a little bit of money to go out and do stuff, I will be trying my hardest to do all the car videos I possibly can. So stay tuned for that. And that is it. So thank you all so much for watching. And for now, I am out of here. See ya. That's cool. I love trains. Fantastic. At least it's not too loud now. I can talk over it, I think. That's cool. The train finished. Cool. That was gonna be annoying if it kept around. And we'll check out the passenger side. There's only doors locked. Hello?